78% of Israel's trans community has considered suicide in the past year. That is according to the largest study ever conducted in Israel on the subject by several Israeli LGBTQ organizations. Over 350 trans people from across the country participated in this survey, and it shows that one of the main crises faced by the community members is the need for employment. There are significant gaps between transgender people and the general population in different job sectors, levels of income, and overall well-being. Well, joining us to break down this disturbing study is Ella Amest, the co-CEO of Ma'avarim, the Israeli trans community. So first of all, Ella, your organization helped conduct this study. Tell us what you were really looking for and how the transgender community is perceived here in Israel.
So, hi, Natasha. Thanks for having me. As with any study that we advise or help conduct, what we are looking for is to further our understanding of the local community. Sadly for us, professionals working in the trans field of activism and public work, these numbers aren't as surprising as they might seem to the outside eye. What we need and what we were hoping for when we heard about this study initially is that we could replicate the numbers we see abroad in many other countries which have budgets dedicated for research, replicated here in Israel in order for us to assert our claims for government officials, etc.
Right. So what are some of the most shocking findings of the survey?
Well, some numbers are disturbing, as I said, to the outside eye. There are extremely high rates of suicide attempts, not just considering suicide, but also attempting it, which is something that, again, very sadly, isn't surprising to us because these are numbers that repeat themselves every so often when studies are like this are made anywhere around the world. That's, of course, not to say that trans people are necessarily suicidal. Other research suggests that when we're supported ever since youth, and more of us are coming out earlier and earlier in life, suicide rates drop to the level of the general population. And that's what social support, public support, educational support provides.
Now, I just want to add some of the other statistics that we didn't mention before here. About a quarter of the members of the trans community, according to this study in Israel, did not earn anything during 2019 when the average monthly income for about half of them was less than 4,870 shekels a month. That's a very low amount. About 64% of the members of the trans community testified to a negative or discriminatory attitude from medical staff members because of their gender identity. 40% reported situations in which medical staff refused to treat them because of their gender identity. I mean, why are we seeing such a big gap in employment, income, and overall well-being in Israel when it comes to the transgender community?
Well, you could say that this is a phenomenon that's self-replicating, if you will. When people are feeling bad, they can't work as well. And when people can't work as well because reality is hard on us, because there's stigma, there's hate against trans people. There are groups that are aiming to discredit our very existence. That prevents us from getting hired and doing our jobs properly when we are hired. People around us, both co-workers and managers and other people who are supposed to protect us in the workplace, instead of that, ask very invasive questions which damage our ability to do our jobs and also make it harder to even pull oneself up to go and look for a job. Right. That's why many of us are unemployed. That, of course, and very harsh discrimination against trans people because, again, prejudice and hate
So I'd like to know, what do you believe the Israeli government needs to do to tackle this divide and promote mental health in the trans community?
Well, in order to promote mental health, I think one central thing to do is to better understand trans people's needs and better accommodate our needs in mental health facilities. Nowadays, many mental health professionals are not trained to address trans people's rights, trans people's issues. And instead of getting treatment when we refer to mental health clinics to get help for our mental health, we need to educate our doctors, our therapists, our counselors. And of course, mental health isn't disconnected from the world in general.
Right.
When one's mental health, when one's life is harder, when one's ability to sustain themselves is damaged, our mental health is too.